I was right out of college. I was a teacher at Chapel. I was a history teacher for the high school. And as he asked about should he be called Mark or Mr. Lund, I was 22 years old when I got to Chapel to start teaching. The students were 18, so it was very little difference between myself and the students. And no one had ever called me Mr. Lund before. And so at the first day of class, I was walking down the hall, and people kept saying, "Hi, Mr. Lund," and I just walked right by them because I'd never been called Mr. Lund before. So I was like, "Who are they talking to?" "I was talking to you. You're the teacher now. You're Mr. Lund." Oh, 22 years old, Mr. Lund. So, but for you guys, let's just say Mark, okay? And I've been in Brazil for 50 years. Came down when I was a little younger than you guys, but had the opportunity to witness my father's business being set up and so forth in Brazil. And so he was an entrepreneur. And I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and you will often find that many of your entrepreneurs come from families that have other entrepreneurs, or they're the children of entrepreneurs, because you are shown a path that you can follow. Okay. Now, at that time, I knew nothing about social entrepreneurship, and I actually worked as an entrepreneur. I had my own business for 25 years. It was a surfing business related. I had shops along the Litoral Norte because my dream was to live on the beach. I didn't want to live in Sao Paulo anymore. So I moved down and started a business, and it didn't look at all like it was going to take off. And everybody said I was crazy. And all the American community sort of said, "Oh, Mark's gone nuts. He's going to go sell chocolate mousse on the beach. So he's going to have a bad time." But as often happens with entrepreneurs is fortune favors the bold. So if you go for your dream, you will be amazed at how many times fortune will step up. When you think, "Uh-oh, there's no way out of this," fortune will step up and give you an answer. That happened. My business flourished. I grew into a franchising operation, 15 stores in Sao Paulo, 5 stores along the beaches, and so forth. And then all the American community said, "Oh, what a man of vision he is." You know, I said, "Yeah, back then you guys thought I was crazy. Now you think I'm a man of vision." But that's the story that usually happens with entrepreneurs. When they start, everybody thinks they're crazy, like Steve Jobs and so forth. But as their dream materializes through their efforts, people see that they weren't so crazy after all. So that was the story that got Getúlio Vargas interested in my case study. And I began to lecture at Getúlio Vargas about entrepreneurship. And then Getúlio Vargas called Babson College when Babson came to Brazil, and I gave the lecture to Babson. And Babson said, "Wow, this is a really unique story. We'd like you to come to Boston." So I went to Boston and so forth, taught there, lectured there, to executives actually, not just to students. And eventually, that helped me move into social entrepreneurship. Now the principles are very much the same. Okay, that what gets you started, the dream that you have, is very much the same. The objective is a little bit different. And the objective is, as an entrepreneur, how can I materialize my dream? But I'm the one that's mostly benefited by this. As we move into social entrepreneurship, the focus changes. And we begin to see that the question turns upside down. And it stops being, "What's in it for me?" And it starts becoming, "What can I do for you? What can I do for the next guy? And what sort of social impact can I generate with what I want to do?" So I thought this was very interesting. Karen brought this. I'm sure she'll send it out for you guys later. But she has 4 very important points here. What's the problem? What's the opportunity? What's the risk? And what's the action? And then she subdivides those into numerous questions. I suggested you guys look at this later because it's pretty well summed up. Very easy to follow. And the first word that calls my attention is problem. Can you guys agree with me that today's products were yesterday's problems? Can you see that? Can you see how that works out, that equation? Problems that were problems yesterday, some entrepreneur said, I want to solve that problem. And he did. And when he solved it, he generated a product that he could sell, he could monetize. And if that product was useful enough for a lot of people, he became Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or something like that. But what you always find, a lot of times we hear about entrepreneurship being about passion, but what you'll always find, if you really dig deep enough into these stories, these guys were looking at a problem. So the first question you guys have to ask yourself is, what's the problem that I would like to address? What's the problem that I see day by day? As we said back in Startup Sale, what's the problem that makes you say, oh my God, I cannot ignore this any longer. I have to do something about this. Maybe it's some poor person in the street. Maybe it's some blind person trying to cross it. Maybe it's somebody that's sick that you have to visit. Maybe it's but it's somebody that you, or something that you have got to help. Okay? Now let me ask you guys, have you ever had that sensation where you really felt like, maybe you didn't do it, but you thought, I wish I could help? Did you ever have that? Yeah? Could you sort of share with the group what sort of situation it was?
I don't remember any specific moments, but I know I've had some.
You've had some. How about you?
I have as well.
Nobody's going to remember. Emiliano, help him out. You're a veteran.
The problem that we try to work with, and through our enterprise, a social one to start with, was the orphanages. We came to know about the Making Think Invisible program and how these children in the orphanages didn't have access to a support network that could actually provide what they needed, the attention they needed, because there were so many in a single space. And so we were trying to think of ways to stimulate those children because they just didn't have any stimuli at all.
Right. And what I like about your project is it's so fitting for Brazil, because Brazil, as you guys remember, my wife runs an orphanage for 50 some kids, and we run into these problems every single day. So what they have found is a problem that's sort of like an opportunity. This is scalable. This is not going to help just one person. It's not going to help just two people. This is going to help a lot of people. So one of the measures in a current business format is how much money can I make? But in the social entrepreneur format, what do you think the question is? Is it how much money can I make?
How many people can I help?
Very good. What's your name?
Raphael.
Raphael. Thank you, Raphael. That's a perfect answer. How many people can I help? So you're going to measure profitability by how many people you can help. Now, do you think that there are a lot of people that they're going to be able to help in Brazil?
Yes.
Tons of people. Okay. How about somebody else? What's something you see on your way to school? What's something you see in your weekends in Brazil that you think you could do something about? I don't mean the big stuff like get rid of Dilma or anything like that. I'm talking about the stuff that's within your reach. Like they can go to an orphanage tomorrow and immediately start having impact.
Well, interject a little.
Yes, definitely.
You've all been in community service in the fifth form or whatever, haven't you? Tato.
Oh, great. There you go.
You know?
We were there yesterday.
You were
talk
in
about these
Cat
things.
Google País, remember that one? Okay, yeah, my sons did that. Now tell me about that today.
We were there 2 days ago. We went to a favela called Beverly Hills.
Oh, that's a nice name for a favela.
Yes, because it has a river,
Okay.
even though it's pretty thin. And we were divided into groups of 12. We each constructed a house for a particular family.
Oh, this was just 2 days ago.
Yeah.
This,
Yeah.
Weekend?
Yeah,
did
Saturday.
this, was it near here, Sao Paulo, or was
Yes.
It was near Guarulhos.
it near Guarulhos?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And how did you feel about that? How did it make you feel? when you came away? Who else did this? Anybody else? You also.
I don't know. I felt like, for me, I came back and I felt like it changed my opinion on like the favelas. You know, like
Okay.
I came with a different perspective. Like I thought it was so dangerous, and we just spent there like 3 days, and it was completely fine.
Okay. What did you come back with?
Well, I was sort of not frustrated, but I just didn't conform to like how people live. It was just something beyond like anything I imagined, and something that really needs to work. Like people were like very bad living conditions, and like I thought that was just wrong.
Could we say that this upset you?
Yes, like I was very happy that we built a house, and I was really happy with the results that we built 10 houses in the favela. But at the same time, I felt like we had to do more because there were so many other houses and people living in general conditions.
It's a drop in the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Brazil has so much to be done that, as important as Teto is, it's still a drop in the bucket. You know? And what she just said, I want to bring out here. Harvard did a study, and they gave money to two groups of people. Okay, and one group said they give them money and they said, here, take this money and go spend it on yourself. Get away from it. No, go spend it on yourself any way you want. You can buy yourself a lunch, go get a bottle of wine. And then they got another group. And they said, here's the money. Now what I'd like you to do is spend it on somebody else. At the end, they measured the level of happiness, return, well-being that each group felt. Which group do you think should have felt better?
The one that
The one that bought it
spent
from
for
No.
themselves.
That's what you think should have happened. But what do you think really happened?
The ones that spent it on other people.
The ones that spent it on other people. They were the ones that came away most fulfilled. So, what I think you guys are doing a great job with your tattoos and so forth, and your ECA. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to do something, find something, go get out there, get a problem, okay, and do something for somebody else. Because I can guarantee you that you will have what I call this in my limited vocabulary, I call this profit 2.0. Profit 1.0, the conventional profit is money. It's how much money am I going to get to keep? That's measured as profit. But profit 2.0 is the inverse, and it's exactly what you just said. What you said about social impact. You start to measure not how much you get to keep, but how much do you get to give back of what you generate. Okay? And what you'll find, and what our capitalist society has to understand, is that we're all going to be a lot better off if we get indignified by these problems that other people are going through instead of just ignoring them and building higher walls and so forth. So my hat's off to you guys in terms of what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and the group, the time that you're taking, the effort that you're putting into this, the projects that you will build today, tomorrow, down the road, whatever. You should try to help our current economy make the transition from what's in it for me to what's in it for we. Okay? Where's the, do you have a blank piece of paper somewhere? No. You give me a blank piece of paper. I want to show you something. Just a little trick, a little gimmick that I came up with. I'm going to need this black guy. Okay? What does it say?
Me.
Right? He's a magician, okay? Right? What does it say if I turn this upside down?
We.
Whoa.
This is all, it's huge, but it's all it takes. It's this simple shift in mindset where I stop thinking about myself and start thinking about the other person. I'm going to wrap up with a story that will show, yeah, you fill it in for me. It will show more or less what I'm talking about. In our command and control society economy today, command and control, like he said before, as he said at the startup of the class, what did he say? What was he was joking with you, but what did he say about who had to listen to who?
Teacher.
Yes, he had something to talk, and if he had something to say, it was going to be interesting, and if you had something to say, we didn't want to hear it. Right? This is actually, Bob was around, I was around, the true format in schools and in homes. Have you ever guys have heard that saying, children are to be seen and not heard? Mm-hmm. Well, in the old day, that was true. Okay. Now, what's happening is this is flipping. They're flipping classrooms. They're flipping home scenarios. They're flipping businesses. They're inverting them. Why? Because they are learning that the guy with the best idea in the room is not necessarily the boss. We could sit here right now and I'll bet that if Bob threw a problem on the table, there's a great chance that you guys have a better solution to that problem than I could, even though I'm supposedly the social entrepreneur. But the way our command and control setup is today is exactly what Bob said before. I'm the boss, you listen to me, I'm the man with the ideas. What companies are beginning to discover is that if you go out to the guy who's at the bottom of the pyramid and you listen to him and find out what he sees as being a problem, you'd be amazed at the innovation that will arise from that. So, quick story. You could not have a more hierarchical command and control scenario than the Army or Navy, right? Military, I tell you what to do, you have to do it. So there's this commander, this is a true story, and this is, actually he's a speaker in the United States all around the country now because he's become famous. This commander is given a ship, 38 years old. He's given a ship worth $1.2 billion. 330 sailors on the ship that he's got to command. And he gets on the ship and he wants to know everybody's name. He says, if I really want to do this right, I don't want to be that sort of aloof commander that nobody talks to, nobody knows. I want to be the guy that they can talk to. So I have to know their names. So he starts having this process whereby he invites every single sailor into his room and he asks him if he's married, what's his wife's name, does he have any kids, and so forth. And what comes out of this is an amazing question. As he goes through this process, he comes up with a question, what is your goal and how can I, quote unquote, Navy, help you to solve it? That's a totally different question than what you would think he would be asking. The other question, what it should have been perhaps, would be, what can you do and how can you do it for me? Right? But he doesn't. He asks, what is your goal and how can I help you achieve it? This is the problem. He's going to try to identify the problems within not only his ship, the operational aspect, but he's also going to try to identify the problem of each and every person under his command. How can he help them? So instead of being top down, he's going to turn this thing all around, and it's going to be bottom up. So what he does is he asks, and you know what their major problem was, their major concern? These are all people not much older than you. You know, the average Navy guy is like 20-something years old. And he said, why did you join the Navy? And they say, because we want to go to college and we can't afford it. The Navy will help us pay. So he says, oh, so that's your goal? You want to go to college? And they said, yeah. So you know what he does? He starts administering SAT classes on board his ship. He flies in specialists that can teach these people that are not going to high schools like St. Paul's. I can guarantee you that. Okay? Flies these people in, and then he gets permission from the SAT board to administer the test on his ship. And like half of those people ended up getting into college and going to college. Do you think his concern was about what they can do for the Navy or what the Navy could do for them?
The Navy.
Okay, now that's half of the story. The other half of the story is when he gets the ship, it's the third worst ship in the entire Pacific Fleet. The worst records, worst testing and so forth in terms of shooting and speed to get ready for go to battle and stuff like that. In 1 year after he took this approach, in 1 year it had broken every record in the Pacific. It was the #1 ship. Because he asked the right question. It wasn't about what can you do for me. You get people on board when they feel that your interest is in their welfare, not your interest is in your welfare. Okay, now this is a huge flip from our current mentality. Okay, to go from that to that is a big flip in our mentality. But this is what is behind social entrepreneurship. So this is kind of like the big picture, okay? Sort of the philosophical background. Let me just tell you one last little story that's attached to this. Guy's name is Michael Abrashoff. You can see him on YouTube and like that stuff. And Michael Abrashoff, in this process, how did he get to be #1 ship in the Pacific? With tiny little contributions that were made by the guys that were like the bottom of the ladder. The sailors that had just signed up. They weren't 22 years old yet. So when he asked one of these sailors that's 22 years old, he says, what do you like about the ship? What would you change? What would you keep the same? And the sailor says, can I talk freely? He says, yeah, go right ahead. He says, did you ever notice that we have to paint this ship 1 month yes, 1 month no, 1 month? We paint it 6 times a year, this ship. So we're talking about a destroyer. Okay? And when you have to paint a destroyer, that means you got to chip off all the rust. That means you got to sand it. That means you got to paint it. And he says to the captain, he says, did you ever have to paint your house? Americans paint their houses a lot. They don't hire people to paint. You paint your own house. He says to the captain, did you ever paint your own house? And the captain says, yeah. And so the sailor says to him, it sucks, doesn't it? And the captain says, yeah. And he goes, what are you trying to get at? And he says, how do you think we feel about painting this ship? So the captain says, well, we've been painting ships for 235 years. What are you getting at? He says, well, did you ever stop to think? Where's the problem? Did you ever stop to analyze the problem? And the captain says, no, why? He says, well, what makes us have to paint the ship is the fact that everything is nuts and bolts tied down to the hull with ferrous metal. And in the ocean, sea, salt water, that metal rusts quickly and makes stains down the side of the ship, and we have to chip it all off and paint it. So the captain says, yeah. He says, ever heard of stainless steel? And the captain says, this is a 20-year-old kid. The captain says, yeah, the stuff that doesn't rust. And he goes, exactly. So the captain gets out his credit card, buys $30,000 worth of nuts and bolts, changes all the fixings on the ship, and they don't paint that ship for another 10 months. The entire Navy adopted that measure. changed all the nuts and bolts throughout the entire Navy, saved the Navy millions of dollars, millions of man hours, because somebody went after the problem and listened to the guy who had the problem. That sailor was the one who had the problem. The commander didn't have the problem. He doesn't have to paint the ship, something like that. So, social entrepreneurship, as I said, to wrap up, is all about you guys going out there and finding a problem, looking at it hard, analyzing it, and trying to come up with what is the solution that I can bring to that problem. And if you can do that, then you have the second challenge, with which Emiliano and Karen and Carolina know, is I've got to pay for this, right? That we'll talk about on another date. But how does a social entrepreneurship generate the funds to keep it alive? That's the second challenge. First challenge is to find out, what do I want to do? The second challenge is, how am I going to pay for this? Okay? So great. What do you guys think?
Can we first of all say thank you?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this, Karen, and I hope you'll send me a copy. I really enjoyed this, and maybe we could put it up under your authorship and startup stamp this year. It's very nicely done. As I said, if you guys get a chance, maybe you get a small copy or whatever. And like I said, the questions are very nice.